I'm Kevin. This is my wife Brittany, and today we are going to go over the MacArthur Daily Bible for June 14th, and we'll be starting in the Old Testament of Second Kings. And
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and start with 2 Kings chapter 15, verses 1 through chapter 16, verse 20. In the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Azariah, son of Amizah, king of Judah, became king. He was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jechala of Jerusalem. He did right in the sight of the Lord according to all that his father Amizah had done. Only the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burnt incense on the high places. The Lord struck the king so that he was a leper to the day of his death, and he lived in a separate house while Jotham, the king's son, was over the household judging the people of the land. Now the rest of the acts of Azariah and all that he did are not written in the books of the chronicles of the king of Judah. And Azariah slept with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. And Jotham his son became king in his place. In the 38th year of Azariah king of Judah, Zechariah son of Jeroboam became king over Israel and Samaria for 6 months. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, as his fathers had done. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam son of Nebat, which he made Israel sin. Then Shallum son of Jabesh conspired against him and struck him before the people, and killed him and reigned in his place. Now the rest of the acts of Zechariah, behold, they are written in the books of the chronicles of the king of Israel. This is the word of the Lord, which he spoke to Jehu, saying, Your sons of the fourth generation shall sit on the throne of Israel. And so it was. Shallum, son of Jabesh, became king of the 39th year of Uzziah, king of Judah, and he reigned 1 month in Samaria. Then Menahem, son of Gedi, went from Tirzah and came to Samaria, and struck Shallum, the son of Jabesh, in Samaria, and killed him, and became king in his place. Now the rest of the acts of Shallum and his conspiracy which he made, behold, they are written in the books of the chronicles of the king of Israel. Then Menahem struck Tippish and all who were in it and its borders from Tirzah, because they did not open to him. Therefore he struck it and ripped up all its women who were with child. In the 39th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Menahem, son of Gedi, became king over Israel and reigned 10 years in Samaria. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart all his days from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he made Israel sin. Pul, king of Assyria, came against the land, and Menahem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver, so that his hand might be with him to strengthen the kingdom under his rule. Then Menahem exacted the money from Israel, even from all the mighty men of wealth, from which each man came 50 shekels of silver to pay to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria returned and did not remain there in the land. Now the rest of the acts of Menahem and all he did, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the king of Israel? And Menahem slept with his fathers, and Pekahiah his sons became king in his place. In the 50th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Pekahiah son of Menahem became king over Israel and Samaria, and reigned 2 years. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, and he did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he made Israel sin. Then Pekah, son of Remaliah, his officer, conspired against him, and struck him in Samaria in the castle of the king's house with Argob and Uriah, and came there were 50 men of Gedites, and he killed them and became king in his place. Now the rest of the acts of Pekahiah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the book of the chronicles of the king of Israel. In 52nd year of Azariah, king of Judah, Pekah son of Remaliah became king over Israel and Samaria, and reigned 20 years. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam son of Nebat, which he made Israel sin. In the days of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came to capture Ijon and Abel Beth Makkah, and Janah and Kiddish and Hazor and Gilead and Galilee, and all the land of Naphtali. He carried them captive to Assyria, and Hoshea, son of Elah, made a conspiracy against Pekah, son of Remaliah, and struck him and put him to death, and became king in his place in the 20th year of Jotham, son of Uzziah, Now the rest of the acts of Pekah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Israel. In the 2nd year of Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, Jotham, and the son of Uzziah, king Judah, became king. He was 25 years old when he became king, and reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerusha, daughter of Zadok. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord, and he did according to all that his father Uzziah had done. Only the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. He built the upper gate of the house of the Lord, and the rest of the acts of Jotham and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Judah? In those days, the Lord began to send Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, against Judah. And Jotham slept with his fathers, and he was buried with his fathers in the city of David, his father, and Asa, his son, became king in his place. In the 17th year of Pekah, son of Remaliah, Asa, son of Jotham, king of Judah, became king. Asa was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And he did not do what was right in the sight of the Lord his God, as his father David had done, but he walked in the way of the other kings of Israel, and even made his son pass through fire, according to the abominations of the nations whom the Lord had driven out from before the sons of Israel. He sacrificed and burned incense on the high places and on the hills, and even under every green tree. Then Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to wage war, and they besieged Asa, but could not overcome him. So now our first note is chapter 16, verse 3. Walked in a way of the kings of Israel. This does not necessarily mean that Asa participated in calf worship introduced by Jeroboam at the Bethel and Dan, but that he increasingly brought pagan, idolatrous practices into the worship of the Lord in Jerusalem. These are specified here in verses 10 through 16 and parallel those of Jeroboam I in the northern kingdom. This includes idols to Baal, as stated in 2 Corinthians 28, verse 2, and then made his sons pass through fire. As part of a ritual or worship of Moloch, the god of the Moabites, children were sacrificed by fire. This is in chapter 3, verse 27. This horrific practice was continually condemned in the Old Testament. This is shown in Leviticus chapter 18, verse 21, in chapter 20, verses 2 through 5, in Deuteronomy 18, verses 10, and in Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 31, Jeremiah 19:5, and Jeremiah 32:35. So now we're picking back up in verse 6. At the time Rezin, king of Aram, recovered Elath for Aram, and cleared the Judeans out of the Elath entirely, and the Arameans came to Elath and have lived there to this day. So Asa sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and deliver me from the hand of the king of Aram, and from this hand of the king of Israel, who are rising up against me. Asa took silver and gold that was found in the house of the Lord, and the treasuries of the king's house, and sent a present to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria listened to him, and the king of Assyria went up against Damascus and captured it, and carried the people of it away into exile in a car, and put Rezin to death. Now King Asa went to Damascus to see Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and saw the altar which was at Damascus. Now our first note is from chapter 16, verse 10, at the altar. When Asa traveled to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser III, he saw a large altar, stated in verse 15, which was most likely Assyrian. Asa sent a sketch of this altar to Urijah, the high priest in Jerusalem, and Urijah built an altar just like it. The serious iniquity of this was meddling with and changing with according to personal taste and furnishings of the temple, with the design which had been given by God in Exodus 25, verse 40, Exodus 26, verse 30, Exodus 27, verses 1 through 8, and in 1 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 19. This was like building an idol in the temple done to please a pagan Assyrian king whom Asa served instead of God. Start picking back up with our last verse. And King Asa sent to Urijah, priest, a pattern of the altar and its model according to all its workmanship. So Sir Urijah the priest built an altar according to all that King Asa had sent from Damascus. Thus Urijah the priest made it before coming of King Asa from Damascus. When the king came from Damascus, the king saw the altar, and the king approached the altar and went up to it, and burned his burnt offerings and his meal offering, and poured his drink offering, and sprinkled the blood of his peace offering on the altar. The bronze altar which was before the Lord he had brought from the front of the house, from in between his altar and the house of the Lord, and he put it on the north side of his altar. Then King Asa commanded Uriah the priest, saying, Upon the great altar burn the morning burnt offering, and the evening meal offering, and the king's burnt offering, and his meal offering, with the burnt offering of all the people of the land, and their meal offering, and their drink offerings, and sprinkle it all in the blood of the burnt offering, and all the blood of the sacrifice. But the bronze altar shall be for me to inquire by. So Uriah the priest did it according to all that King Uzziah commanded. Then King Asa cut off the borders of the stands and removed the layer of them. He also took down to the sea from the bronze oxen which were under it, and put it on a pavement of stone. They covered way of the Sabbath which they had built in the house and the outer entry of the king. He removed from the house of the Lord, because the king of Assyria. Now the rest were acts of Asa, which he did. Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Judah? So Asa slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, and his son Hezekiah reigned in his place. Now we're going to be doing Psalm chapter 73, verses 21 through 28. When my heart was embittered, and I was pierced within, then I was senseless and ignorant. I was like a beast before you. Nevertheless, I am continually with you. You have taken hold of my right hand. With your counsel you will guide me, and afterward receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but you? And besides you, I desire nothing on earth. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart, and my portion forever. Behold, those who are far from you will perish. You have destroyed all those who are unfaithful to you. But as for me, the nearness of God is my good. I have made the Lord God my refuge, that I may tell of all your works. And now we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 18, verses 20 through 21. With the fruit of a man's mouth his stomach will be satisfied. He will be satisfied with the product of his lips. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So our note for Proverbs is death and life. The greatest good and the greatest harm are in the power of the tongue. And now we're going to be in the New Testament, John 21, verses 1 through 25. After these things, Jesus manifested himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and he manifested himself in this way. Simon Peter and Thomas called Didymus, and Nathanael and Cana of Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and the two others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, I am going fishing. And they said to him, We will also come with you. They went out and got in the boat, and that night they caught nothing. But when the day was now breaking, Jesus stood on the beach, yet his disciples did not know he was Jesus. So Jesus said to them, Children, you do not have any fish, do you? They answered him, No. And he said to them, Cast the net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you will catch a fish. So they cast, and then they were not able to haul it in because of its great number of fish. Therefore the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, It is the Lord. So when Simon Peter heard it was the Lord, he put his outer garment on, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea. But the other disciples came in the little boat, for they were not far from land, but about 100 yards away, dragging a net full of fish. So when they got out to land, they saw a charcoal fire already laid, and fish placed on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, Bring some of the fish which you have now caught. Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land full of large fish, 153. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, Come and have breakfast. None of the disciples ventured to question him. Who are you? Knowing that it was the Lord, Jesus came and took bread and gave it to them, and the fish likewise. This is now the third time that Jesus was manifested to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. So when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And he said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said to him, Tend to my lambs. And he said to him again a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said to him, Shepherd my sheep. And then he said to him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, Do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all these things. You know I love you, Jesus. And Jesus said to him, Tend my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were younger, you used to gird yourself and walk wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will gird you and bring you where you do not wish to go. Now this he said, signifying by what kind of death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, Follow me. Peter, turning around, saw the disciples whom Jesus loved following them, the one who also had leaned back in his bosom at the supper, and said, Lord, who is the one who betrays you? So Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, Lord, and what about this man? And Jesus said to him, If I want him to remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me. Therefore, saying, went out among the brethren that the disciples would not die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he would not die, but only, If I want him to remain until I come, what is that to you? Now, our note for our New Testament passage is from chapter 21, verse 18 through 19. A prophecy of Peter's martyrdom. Jesus' call of devotion to him would also mean Peter's devotion would entail his own death. This is also referenced in Matthew chapter 10, 37 through 39. Whenever any Christians follow Christ, he must be prepared to suffer and die. This is also referenced in Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 through 26. Peter lived 3 decades serving the Lord and anticipating the death before him. This is referenced in 2 Peter chapter 1 through 12 through 15. But he wrote that such suffering and death for the Lord brings praise to God. This is also referenced in 1 Peter chapter 4 verses 14 through 16. Church tradition records that Peter suffered martyrdom under Nero. This was in AD 67 through 68, being crucified upside down because he refused to be crucified like his Lord. And now we're coming back to verse 24. This is the disciple who is testifying to these things and wrote these things, and we know this testimony is true. And there are also many other things which Jesus did, which if they were written in detail, I suppose that even the world itself would not continue the books that would be written. Now our last note for the day is for day 14. How does Jesus deal with Peter's denial of him during the trial? In John 21, verse 15 through 17, the meaning of the section hinges upon the usage of 2 synonyms for love. In terms of interpretation, the 2 synonyms are placed in close proximity and context. A difference in meaning, however slight, is emphasized. When Jesus asked Peter if he loved him, he used the word love that signified total commitment. Peter responded with a word for love that signified his love for Jesus, but not necessarily his total commitment. This was not because he was reluctant to express that greater love, but because he had been disobedient and denied the Lord in the past. He was perhaps now reluctant to make a claim of supreme devotion when in the past his life did not support such a claim. Jesus pressed home to Peter the need for unswerving devotion by repeatedly asking Peter if he loved him supremely. The essential message here is that Jesus demands total commitment from his followers. Their love for him must place him above their love for all else. Jesus confronted Peter with love because he wanted Peter to lead the apostles. This is referenced in Matthew 16:18. But in order for Peter to be an effective shepherd, his overwhelming drive must exemplify supreme love for his Lord. In verse 15, when Jesus asked him if he loved him more than these, he probably refers to the fish. In verse 11, representing Peter's profession as a fisherman, for he had gone back to it while waiting for Jesus. This is in verse 3. Jesus wanted Peter to love him so supremely as to forsake all he was familiar with and be exclusively devoted to being a fisher of men. This is referenced in Matthew chapter 4, verse 19. The phrase may refer to the other disciples, since Peter had claimed he would be more devoted than all the others. This was referenced in Matthew 26, verse 33. Tend to my lambs. The word tend conveys an idea of being devoted to the Lord's service as an under shepherd who cares for his flock. This is in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 1 through 4. The world has an idea of constantly feeding and nourishing the sheep. This served as a reminder of the primary duty of the messenger of Jesus Christ is to teach the word of God. This is also talked about in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 2. Acts 1:13 records Peter's obedience to this commission. In verse 17, Peter was grieved. The third time Jesus asked Peter, he used Peter's word for love that signified something less than total devotion. Questioning even that level of love, Peter thought he was safe in claiming. The lesson driven home to Peter grieved his heart, so that he sought for a proper understanding of his heart, not by what he did or what he said it had done, but based on the Lord's omniscience. And this is in chapter 2, verses 24 through 25. So that's all of our notes for today.
Excellent. Thank you for reading.
Absolutely.
And thank you for watching. And we hope you have a great rest of the day. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.